Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to ACI Foundation Course 5 on how karma works. I missed you guys last week. I hope you had a great past week and that your studies and your contemplation and your meditations are going well. So let's just take a moment and be clear on our motivation for being here today, for taking this course, and for being here this morning. What is it that we're planting seeds for today? Make it as large and as heartfelt as you can. Sashi Puki Chukshing Metok Tram Mira Blingshi Ninde Kempadi Sange Shindu Mikte Uwarki Drokun Namdak Shingna Chuparsho Idam Guru Ratnam Mandalakam Niryatayami Sangye Chiram Soki Chuknam La Changchu Partu Takni Kyapsu Chi Taki Chishe Ki Pe Sunam Ki Jola Pinshir Sangye Druparsho Sangye Chiran Soki Chuknam La Changchu Pardu Takni Kyapsu Chi Taki Chishe Ki Pe Sunam Ki Drola Pinshir Sangye Druparsho Sangye Chiran Soki Chukdam La Changchu Pardu Dakni Kyapsu Chi Daki Chishe Ki Pe Sunam Ki Drola Pinchir Sangye Druparsho. So before we get started on our 8th class, are there any questions from the previous classes? No questions. Have you thought about it at all? How are the readings and homeworks going? reading is difficult. I agree. It's difficult. Yeah, it is very interesting to think about karma because it's the I don't know thing. It's the explanation for why we are who we are, why like our family and friends are who they are, uh, why our house is the way it is, why our neighborhood is the way it is, why the country we live in is the way it is. Uh, it's the explanation for all of it. And I, I for one am very uh, grateful that there are these teachings that describe these different aspects of karma, uh, so that we can use karma with wisdom, to create a reality that's not suffering. Okay, so let's just get back to it then. I'm a little dehydrated from being on the plane from Mexico. Okay. I apologize for not getting the Tibetan file ready for you, uh, to hand out before class, but I'll work on this after class and get that posted. So today's class is um, it's really important stuff because we're talking about uh, how you can cut your root of virtue, and we'll get into that. How you can restore it, and then we're going to talk about another division of karma, which is projecting karma and finishing karma. So first, we're going to talk about Getsa. Say Getsa. Lips moving, please. Getsa. Getsa. Ge means virtue. Sa means root. So it's the root of virtue. And it's made up of two things. Sunam Kitsok. Sunam Kitsok. And Yeshe Kitsok. These are a word for these two, along with the root of your virtue, is Tsokni, which just means the two collections. Tsokni. So Tsok means collection. Can also mean gathering. And uh, Sunam means merit. Like Venerable Sunam, the director at Diamond Mountain. That's what her name means. So the collection of merit. And what this collection is, so what we're doing just basically when we talk about a collection, in the practice of the Buddhist teachings, we are in our practice and study and service and meditation, we're creating the karmas to see ourselves as an enlightened being in the future, right? We're collecting these karmas. And the Tsunam Kitso, the collection of merit, it's related to actions we've done, related to the first four perfections. And these are the perfections of giving, the perfection of morality, the perfection of not getting angry, and the perfection of taking effort in doing things that benefit others. So when we do things related to those four perfections, we are adding to our collection of merit. And then the collection of wisdom, Geshe means wisdom. They're related to actions that we do with the others' perfections. So the perfection of concentration and the perfection of wisdom. It also includes the perfection of joyous effort, because joyous effort is, it's both a mental state of mind, taking delight in doing virtue, but it's also a wisdom. I'm sorry, it's also an activity. Because that is like your inspiration to do things with your body and speech. So as we talked about before, it can take in the Mahayana path, the great vehicle path, it can take well, they say it took the Buddha 75,000 kalpa or eons, and 76,000 eons, and 77,000 eons to collect all the karma necessary to become a fully enlightened being. It took, to me, unfathomable amount of time. But that's okay. It takes the time it does. So, what are the results of these two collections? The Tsunam Kitso, the collection of merit, creates or can be correlated with the two bodies of a Buddha. So this is talking about the physical body. And there are two types. The one, it's called the Nirmanakaya, which is the form that the Buddha takes when, for example, when Shakyamuni Buddha was on this planet and teaching. That was the Nirmanakaya. That was his form body here. And then there's the Sambhogakaya, which is the form that Shakyamuni Buddha, for example, takes in his Buddha paradise when he's hanging out with all the high-level bodhisattvas. So the collection of merit activities, basically, virtue activities, creates the form body. And then the collection of wisdom, the Geshe Kitso, that creates the Buddha's mind. It creates the emptiness of his mind. Now, creates, that's going too far, right? It refers to the emptiness of the Buddha's mind. But mainly it's the wisdom of an enlightened being. The wisdom held in the mind of an enlightened being, and the omniscience of an enlightened being. When we see emptiness directly for the first time, we see the Dharmakaya, we see the emptiness of an enlightened being. When you come out of that experience, Geshe Michael says, you see the Dharma body, you see the wisdom of a Buddha. You've just seen the emptiness of a Buddha, and you see the physical body, the form body of a Buddha. So after you come out of Tonglang, which is the path of seeing, you no longer have any doubt about there being a Buddha. And you realize that every single painting you ever see, I mean, like the hotel I was staying at, I somehow ended up on the wrong floor. And it was the top floor of this hotel. And the door opens and there's this humongous Buddha statue. It's just glorious. It's beautiful, golden color. And it's like 5 or 6 feet tall. Buddha sitting in meditation. And the walls are covered with this elaborate red wallpaper, like velvet. And it was just the most amazing sight. So if I had seen emptiness directly before in my life, then I would have, realized that, oh, this represents someone who exists, like a photograph. So these two collections represent all the karma, all the actions that we're doing to put the teachings into practice so that we ourselves can get free of suffering and we can reach the highest state that we possibly can so that we can be of benefit to others as well. Now, the Abhidharma Kosha says that it is possible to getsa chupa. So getsa, again, is the root of virtue. And chupa, this is the same chupa in the book or the sutra, the Diamond Cutter Sutra. This means to cut, chupa. We can cut our root of virtue. We can lose our most basic virtue, which is, a terrifying idea. So we should know how to avoid doing that, right? We don't want to waste our work that we've done. Both the Hinayana, the lesser vehicle, which again just means lesser in terms of what your motivation is. It's the motivation to get yourself out of the realm of suffering. And the Mahayana, the greater vehicle, the motivation to get both yourself and all others out of suffering. So both vehicles, both the lesser vehicle and the greater vehicle, have this idea of it's possible to destroy your root of virtue. And when they talk about destroy your root of virtue, the language is a little bit confusing because it talks about actually destroying, wiping out, obliterating that root of those karmic seeds that are your root of virtue. But then the reading also talks about how you can restore or reconnect with your root of virtue. So it's a little bit confusing. And I think that it's something we would need to see directly. And I hope none of us ever do. I hope none of us ever destroy or obliterate our root of virtue. But we will get to it today, what to do to reconnect with our root of virtue. Nonetheless, it's a serious thing to harm the seeds that you've collected. So let's first talk about how they can be destroyed. And we're going to talk about this from the Abhidharma point of view. And then we'll talk about it from the middle way point of view. The Abhidharma talks about lokta. Say lokta. Ha means view, philosophical view, worldview. And lok means wrong. It means like polar opposite. That may be an English idiom. It means, exact opposite. So, for example, the lokta, the wrong view, that can destroy your root of virtue is to think that something that does exist does not exist. And what is relevant for us in this course in our practice of the Dharma is that the major example is that we don't believe karma exists. So karma is something that exists, and we don't believe that it does. And why is that such a problem? Well, if we don't believe in karma, we won't create the virtue that we need to be able to get out of suffering, right? If we think that that's it, that it doesn't exist. Now, it's not just, we're not talking about just having some skepticism or not yet being convinced that karma exists. Like, we're studying about karma, we're not quite sure yet for ourselves, but we haven't made a decision. This is referring to holding a sustained, strong belief that karma does not exist. Other wrong views could be about emptiness, that holding this strong belief and holding it, sustaining it over a period of time, that things have some nature of their own. Because we do walk around all day and things do appear to have some nature of their own, right? They appear to be coming to us. So it's not that in every moment we've destroyed our virtue. It's holding the strong conviction, that this is all nonsense. The Buddhist teachings do not reflect reality. There's just no possibility that there's another type of existence other than the one I'm in right now, which is that I'm born, I die, in the middle, I suffer. That's it. Nothing more. And we hold on to that. So going back to with karma, the other danger is that we do things that harm others. We continue to do things that harm others. And we are creating more suffering, not only for other people, the ones we come into contact with, but for ourselves in the future. And that's just tragic, totally unnecessary once we learn about how it is we create our world. It would be much safer if we didn't quite accept that karma exists. It would be much safer to say, I don't know if karma exists or not, but why don't I just stop harming others and, start benefiting others just in case it does. That would be a much safer approach. And then as we continue to practice and study, our wisdom will grow. Our wisdom will grow over time as we practice these teachings. Our understanding of what the Buddha was talking about when he taught, why he taught what he taught, will grow more and more deep more and more profound for us. So it's okay to question. It's okay to have skepticism. In fact, the Buddha invites us to not just accept with blind faith everything that he taught. So, and while we're exploring some concept, some idea, if we don't yet accept it, we can, Maitreya talks about putting it on the shelf, not to, not to stop thinking about it, but to put it on the shelf and like, I will take this down again later. Let me continue to study and learn more. And this idea, the one I'm not so sure about, I'll put this up here and I'll look at it later. And then don't forget that you put it up there. Do bring it down later every once in a while and look at it again and see, now what does this look like for, how does this appear to me? What do I think about this now? So again, we're not talking about questioning. We're not talking about wondering if things are true. We're talking about a sustained, very strong opinion that about something that exists and thinking it does not exist. That's lokta. There's also the opposite, thinking that things that don't exist do exist, right? So that would be the wrong view about selflessness or the lack of a self nature to things, thinking that I exist, the strong self, the feeling, like when someone accuses you of something, that feeling that comes up, thinking that represents a real self that we have to then protect and take care of. Stay away from things we don't like and bring things to us that we do like. So lokta is both of those kinds of wrong views, thinking that things that do exist don't, and thinking that things that don't exist do. Primarily related to karma in the first instance and emptiness in the second. From the greater vehicle way, they also talk about another possible cause, another cause for losing your root virtue. And it's Kongtru Getsachu. Say Kongtru, Kongtru Getsachu. So Getsachu, that's our cutting our root of virtue, which we had a little earlier. And Kongtru, this just changes pronunciation because we've got this little particle in here. But Kongtru, that means anger. And Master Shantideva talks about this in the Bodhisattva's way of life. That a moment of anger towards a bodhisattva can wipe out your entire collection of virtue. One moment of anger towards a bodhisattva can wipe out your entire collection of virtue. So anger, that's related to which of the bodhisattva perfections? I'll get to that, Wangbu. I'll get to that question. But of the 6 perfections, which one would anger be related to? The 3rd, right? Thank you, Alexander. The perfection of not getting angry. So there's this bodhisattva level called Ujjhapa, which means light maker, light, like what the sun produces, light maker. And we can't reach that level, Ujjhapa, until we perfect the ability of not getting angry when we otherwise would have. Like if someone is really bothering us repeatedly, and we just continue to not get angry. We continue to have patience. Classically speaking, they talk about this as anger directed towards a bodhisattva, towards someone who has seen emptiness directly and with bodhicitta in their heart, right? And they're on the path. They're like soon to be enlightened beings. They're working towards enlightenment. They will become enlightened. So having anger towards that kind of being is classically what they talk about. So the wrong view is what the Abhidharma talks about as how to destroy your root of virtue. And then anger is what's concentrated on in the middle way scriptures. So I don't know about you, but I'm not able to recognize who is bodhisattva and who is not. So is it less? Is the karma not quite complete if I don't know the she, the object of my anger? If I don't have recognition that who I'm angry at is a bodhisattva. The scriptures say it doesn't matter whether you think the person you're angry at is a bodhisattva or not. That the identification of the object as a bodhisattva is not so important. It doesn't play as big of a role as your anger. The other thing scripture says is that, I know it's really scary. The other thing scripture says is that it doesn't matter if you have a good reason or not. If you feel justified in your anger. Now that's a kind of tricky subject, right? Us normal people, if you're like me, we feel like, if someone, just to use a, maybe an obvious example, if someone is drunk and driving their car and they run a red light and they smash into my car and they break my legs and I have to go to the hospital for a long time, I'm out of work, it affects my family, my car, insurance, I have to pay for it all. Like, our normal reaction is to get angry at that person. And we feel we did nothing right. They were drinking and driving. They ran a red light. They smashed into my car. They hurt me. They destroyed my property. I have every good reason to be angry. But what is anger an indication of? Anger, in particular, of the emotions that we have, is an indication that we don't understand where things come from. Anger is a sign that we think things are coming at us and that we've got no responsibility, we've got nothing to do with what we experience. So when people don't do what we want them to do and we get angry at them, we think that they're doing something to us. And we've got nothing to do with that. That we didn't create the whole scenario by our own past actions of not doing what someone else wanted us to do. And somehow bringing them discomfort or annoyance or disturbance, whatever it is. Somehow we disturbed someone else by not doing what they asked us to do. Could have been something like our mom asking us to clean our room, and we didn't do it. And then someone later on in a business relationship does something we didn't want them to do, and it harms our company. It harms our profits. That comes from us. So getting angry is sort of this very fierce emotional expression of ignorance, of misunderstanding. Like, we can use as a trigger for us in our practice of these teachings. If we start to get angry about something, we can go, oh, wait a minute, that I've got some mistaken idea of what's going on here. What is it exactly that I think is happening? And And what is it that is the more likely explanation for what's going on? So this anger, even if we don't express it, even if we don't yell or hit, even if it's a thought of anger, it's the emotion of anger, that is also enough to destroy our root of virtue. So this is, we're in very it's I don't want it's dangerous, but it's very helpful to know that anger has that kind of power, and what anger is, exactly, and how important it is for us to make when we start to feel anger. And we can, the more we are witnesses to how thoughts and emotions like arise in our mind, in our hearts, the more sensitive we are to them, the earlier we can catch thoughts and emotions, and and have the opportunity to not allow them to grow. For example, if we start to get angry, we can go, wait a minute. That's like in my culture, we have this idea of counting to 10. When you start to feel angry, they say, stop, count to 10. And in that time of counting to 10, you calm down. As if you're a Buddhist, you can use that time of counting to 10 to explore, what's the mistake? What is it that I have a misconception about? Primarily, it's related to ignorance, to misunderstanding where things come from. So we can remove ourselves from situations, just quickly, walk away rather than get angry at somebody. In a do so in a, I don't know, as culturally responsible way as we can. Because if we are someone who tends to be angry, we'd be walking away from things a lot. So, it's all a matter of practice, and the more we put attention and effort into practicing how to put these teachings, how to bring them into our hearts and into our lives and how we interact with others. The more we practice, the more proficient we become. So that's the good news about that. So knowing whether or not the person is a bodhisattva, not so important, right? And we've already talked about the 4 paths of karma. We talked about she, the object. The she here of a bodhisattva is such a powerful object. This is a being who has seen emptiness directly. They are on, they will become enlightened because they have bodhicitta. They have the wish to become enlightened in order to benefit all beings. They're a very high object, a very powerful object for us. The scriptures do say that it's the anger of a bodhisattva towards another bodhisattva. That's the classic example. But the scriptures go on to say that it applies to getting angry at anybody, whether or not they are a bodhisattva. So I find it personally more helpful to think about, what anger represents, that it represents this really fierce, strongly held in the moment, ignorance, misunderstanding of what's going on, thinking that things are coming to me, having, that I played no role in creating, that I'm being, wrongfully harmed. It's just a really mistaken emotion, a very dangerous, mistaken emotion. And the more we can think about how, if someone does something to disturb us or annoy us, to, instead of being angry, instead of allowing that first impulse to grow into anger, to think about, oh, that's the ripening of that negative karma. That's finished. I've experienced this little bit of suffering. Yay, that's over with. Another one gone. Yay. Okay. So really, unfortunately, and this is my confession to you, is that it also includes inanimate objects. Sometimes I get angry at my word program because it doesn't do what I think it's supposed to do. And so I yell at it. And then I go, oh, no. I created this program. This comes from me. So even if you get angry at traffic, so just anger in itself is such a powerful negative emotion that we should, if we tend to anger, we should spend some attention on how we can work with turning our mind around about avoiding becoming angry. Okay. Now, so it's these two things, wrong view and anger, that can destroy your root of virtue. Now, the Abhidharma says that only certain kinds of beings can lose their root of virtue. So what are some properties of this kind of being? The first is that they're a human being. Other types of beings are either suffering too much, or having too much pleasure, that they don't have the ability to hold a sustained thought or to think clearly. We're like the only kind of being that can do so. We have the ability to concentrate. And we know that, like, for example, if we're really sick or something, or we don't get enough sleep, that we can't concentrate. So we know what that feels like, to not be able to concentrate, not to be able to think clearly. And it's very uncomfortable because we also know what it means to think clearly. And it's, I don't know about you, but much more preferable to me to be thinking clearly than to be muddled and confused or distracted by pain. So that's one thing. You can't sustain wrong view if you can't think clearly. The other thing the Abhidharma says is a property of a kind of being who can cut their root of virtue is to have their sexual organ intact. This is a big thing about Abhidharma, about whether your sexual organ is intact. We see it come up in who can take vows, who can become a monastic. And we see it in many different places. So there's something about if eunuchs, for example, those whose penises have been cut off, I think that's what it is. I may not be entirely correct about that, but some part of their sexual organ is cut off. And so they don't have the same ability to think as someone who does have an intact sexual organ. And then the third quality is that if we take human beings with intact sexual organs, and we can divide them into two types: those who are more sensual in nature, and those who are more intellectual in nature. And it's the ones who are more intellectually inclined. They'd be more interested in reading a book than, I don't know, taking a walk in a garden or something. So it's the intellectual types, the ones who have this proclivity to understand things intellectually. People who think things through very carefully. Because this has to be this rejection of something that does exist as not existing, has to be sustained. It has to be felt very strongly, and it has to be sustained over time. And it has to be a complete rejection. Not just a momentary flash of, oh, that can't be true. So now let's talk about how we can reconnect with our root of virtue if we have destroyed it. So when we were talking about the Abhidharma's position on destroying your root of virtue, we're talking about that being lokta, wrong view, right? So they say there are two ways to reconnect with your root of virtue. The first one, you get my Tibetan back. The first one is Tetsom. Say Tetsom. That means doubt. Now, usually when we talk about doubt, we talk about it as either a negative thing or, like an indication that we need to work through something so we don't reject, the Buddhist teachings. So doubt here is the kind of doubt where we're doubting our own mistaken idea. So we hold, excuse me, the mistaken or the harmful thought that karma doesn't exist. Let's say we don't sustain it, but we just have that thought. Karma doesn't exist. And then what can reconnect us with our root of virtue is having doubt. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe karma does exist. We're not certain yet, but we're questioning. Was I wrong? I might have been wrong. Karma might exist. Just that can restore your connection with your root of virtue. And then the next one is ngepa. Say ngepa. And that means certainty. So this would be where we once held this sustained view that karma doesn't exist. We have certainty that it does. And this certainty is based on a tsema, an accurate perception. It's the mental function of being certain based on accurate perception. So I don't know what a good example of this would be, because it seems to me if you've destroyed your root of virtue, that you may have destroyed the karmic seeds that you need to have a direct perception of emptiness. So I'm not sure exactly how this functions. It's a bit of a mystery to me. But they say that if you have an accurate perception, you have a certainty based on an accurate perception, it can restore your root of virtue. When we're talking about if you've cut your root of virtue because you say, karma doesn't exist. This is all nonsense. Well, we know that the workings of karma are shintukokyo, right? They're very hidden. Only a Buddha can see, if you do this, you get this result. So how can we ever have an accurate perception as an ordinary being that to be certain that karma exists? It's just a question worth thinking about, worth meditating about, worth talking with your friends about. Maybe this doubt in thinking, oh, maybe I was wrong. Maybe that doubt is planting the kind of seeds that we need in order to have certainty in the future. That's all I can come up with myself. And I'm interested to hear what you come up with. And I lost my chat. Right. Is it destroy or just block the seeds? And, when you cut your root virtue, it's unclear in the text because they do use the words, obliterate, destroy. But then they also talk about seeds being burnt, which maybe if they're burnt, it just, harms some outer layer. If we take that physical seed analogy a little farther, it's not very clear. It's not very clear in the text. I think from the Mahayana view, the really important thing for us is to, once we have heard the teachings and have been practicing the teachings and have been exposed to how it is that karma and emptiness work. Once we have that clear understanding of them, that we need to use that understanding to prevent ourselves from, like, I don't know, like taking philosophical breaks, like taking a vacation from practice and just letting ourselves go wild and get angry, because that is such a powerful negative action, anger. It is, diametrically opposed to wisdom. And that we are in this situation of, once we have been exposed to and understand the workings of karma and emptiness, we can't take a vacation. I mean, we can, but it's much more powerful negative results for us in the future if we're not working to put these teachings in our heart and put them into practice. Wasting these teachings, like having it go in one ear and out the other. We have this saying in my country: the words come in and poof, they don't stay. Is is wasting the Dharma, is wasting teachings that can save us from suffering, that can save us from reaching a state of being where we can benefit countless other people. Just things to think about. So now let's talk about quickly. I've got 2 more things to cover so I can stay on track. We're going to talk about another way of talking about karma, and that's talking about projecting karma and finishing karma. So, enjekile. So we're going to have this word in the phrase is going to change. And then we've got this phrase, che, ki, le. Che means to do. Le is karma. And this is of. So the karma of doing what? Pen means to project. Like I don't know if they do it at movie theaters anymore. Do they have projectors? They used to have projectors that the film ran in front of a light and it projected the image on the screen. I think it's all digital now, probably. And then anyway, the other one is called dzogche. And dzog means to complete, to finish. So what are we talking about here? So when we talk about pen, projecting, what the Abhidharmakosha is talking about is the karmic seed that ripens and it projects your next life. So this one seed projects your entire next life. In other words, what kind of a being are you going to be in your next life? Are you going to be a human being? Are you going to be a hell being? Are you going to be an animal? Are you going to be a hungry ghost or a craving spirit, preta? Or are you going to be one of the gods in the higher realms? Well, still desire realm, but one of those kind of pleasure gods. So this is an idea that is not totally accepted by other schools. So Abhidharmakosha is very clear that it's one seed that ripens and it projects your entire next birth. And they say that it can only be one seed because we don't like change back and forth between human and animal, or oh, I'm a hell being right now, and then 15 minutes later I'm a cat or something. So they say that it's this one seed that's responsible for which kind of rebirth you're going to take, what kind of life you're going to have in your next rebirth. And this starts from the pardo, because or in between. Pardo is a being in between. This is in between the ending of this life and the beginning of the next life. There's a period of time where the story is you're basically like wandering around looking for your next parents. You're looking for a place to be born into. So but the Bardo being takes on certain characteristics of the type of being you're going to become. Like, otherwise, why would you ever be attracted to be, for example, born in the womb of a dog? So this one seed projects from your next Bardo being in between this life and the next, and what kind of being you're going to be in the next life. And when you take that birth, different types of beings have different average average time that you're alive. Like, human beings are somewhere around 70 or something. Animals, that's a real big range, actually. Some animals live for thousands of years, and some animals live for, less than a day. Like some insects, they don't live very long. So anyway, the range of your life can be very different. And then, as opposed to the Zok Jekile, the completion karma, or the finishing karma. Geshe Michael calls it finishing karma. And the example here is from the Abhidharma, actually, is of a master painter who has a bunch of apprentices, people who are studying with him to become painters. And so the master painter will like compose the picture in a way of like trees go here and people go here, and we'll do the outlines of the people, and they do all the important parts, and then the apprentices come in and just finish up the small details, like which color goes where, and is that a dark color or light color, all the fine details of the painting. So we can think about in one lifetime, we have many different details going on in our lives. We can be wealthy, we can be poor, we can go back and forth between being wealthy and being poor. We can be beautiful when we're a child, and maybe there's a period of time when we're a teenager when we're not so beautiful, and then older, we become beautiful again. And like, there's all these little details. And so those come from many different karmas that ripen into those kind of characteristics or details of our life. Finishing karma. The Mahayana school, just so you know, says that in terms of projecting karma, there's more than one karma involved in what your next life is, with the exception of something that's called sammekile, which is something we're going to get into later, but it's a karma that which ripens into your next birth being one in the hells. So there are certain actions that if you do them, that will happen. But those are the only kind of circumstances where one karma would be in control of your whole next life. there is a certain stage on the path, thankfully, this is good news, where we can no longer cut our root of virtue. So the 5 paths are the path of preparation, the path of accumulation, the path of seeing, the path of habituation, and the path of no more learning. The first path is where we work on developing renunciation, of becoming like, no, only suffering comes from this life. And I want to, I want to get out. And then the second path is where you have an intellectual understanding of emptiness. The third path is where you see emptiness for the first time, and then you have other realizations. And then the fourth path is becoming familiar with or habituated to what you saw on the third path. And then the fifth path isn't really a path, it's that you've finished the previous 4 paths. You've reached your goal. If you're Mahayana, you've reached enlightenment. If you're Hinayana, you've reached Arhat. You've reached Nirvana. So Jorlam is the name of the second path. And what's happening on that path is we're getting our understanding of emptiness is getting more and more refined and clear. And the more clear our understanding of emptiness, the less we will get angry. So it's at that point, on the second path, with a clear understanding. We don't have to have seen emptiness directly. We just have to have a clear understanding of emptiness. And with that understanding, we know that if we were to get angry at others, we're just creating horrific circumstances for ourselves in the future, and we just are not moved to do so. Okay. So that's the good news. The last thing we talk about is something called, we have here, mushi musum. This is a logical idea that things are either connected in 3 ways. There are, well, mu means permutation, and shi means 4. Sum means 3. So things have, there can be either 3 or 4 permutations or relationships between 2 things. So, for example, if we're looking at projecting karma and finishing karma, what are the 4 ways that these can be related? So I'll give you the first one, and then it should be clear for the rest. I mean, we'll go through them all, but so is there an example of something that is a positive projecting karmic result and a negative finishing karmic result? So In other words, is there something that is both a good rebirth and has some problems, some negativities going on? A human. Yeah, a human. We got suffering going on and we got a good rebirth. Uh, when they talk about this one, then they normally talk about it's a human um, who's sick all the time. So they've got, their finishing karma details, fine details is that they're sick a lot. So now what would be an example of a bad or negative projecting karmic result and a positive or good finishing result? So it wouldn't be a being who's born in the higher realm, in the higher forms of existence in the desire realm. So it's not a human or one of the two kinds of God, pleasure beings. So we've got to be talking about some lower kind of birth, but with a good finishing result. So with some positive qualities. The classical example is there's this guy who stands at the gates of hell, and he's Shinje is his name. He's the Lord of Death. He controls all the hell belt, the hell realm beings, and he's got a bad rebirth in the hells, horrible place to be, but good finishing result in that he's the one in charge. The other example that they give in the scriptures is nagas, and nagas are these sort of like dragon snake-like creatures who they live deep in the water, and they're very intelligent, and they love the Dharma. They collect the Dharma, but they're these weird animal creature type beings. Then what's an example of a good projecting karmic result and a good finishing karmic result? Anyone in this class. You're a human and you're attracted to the Buddhist teachings and you're practicing them and you're going to become enlightened. And then an example of the fourth and final permutation, which is a bad or negative projecting karmic result and a bad or negative finishing karmic result. And the classic example here is being born in Narme, which is Avicii hell, the lowest hell, the most extreme, painful, and lengthy kind of existence in the wheel of suffering. So those are the four possibilities: good, good, bad, bad, good, bad, bad, good. Okay. So I see there's a question there. I'll copy it and address it next time, okay? So thank you so much for coming, and thank you for your practice. And as always, I'm up against the end of time. And so I ask you to please, 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 please remember to dedicate as soon as we hang up, okay? To make this a complete karma. Okay. Oh, good. Thank you for answering about the question of Avicii. Yeah, lowest health. Okay. Wonderful to see you all again. And I will see you next week. Next week is our last 2 classes already. I can't believe it. Okay. Have a good weekend.